Love them or hate them, you cannot deny that Tesla has had a very profound impact on the automotive world over the last few years, and we've had some incredible Tesla-related car stories here on the VINwiki channel, and today I've compiled our top 10 Tesla stories into a single video for you to enjoy. So I hope you enjoy this one, but I also hope that you'll check out today's video sponsor, BetterHelp. With summer in full swing, if your schedule or your life is anything like mine, the kids are doing all this stuff, there's this to do, that to do, and it is almost impossible to feel productive and just move the things down the field that we have to do in our lives and in work and our careers and everything else. And so I hope that you'll check out BetterHelp because they have the ability to connect you with a therapist to help you get through whatever it is that you're going through in life, whether it's an issue with a relationship, at work, depression, anxiety, stress. I know for me, it's easy to get caught up in the perfectionism or overly obsessed with chasing the next goal or the next deal. And sometimes it's hard to see whatever we're doing as good enough and just make that decision to press forward. The majority of BetterHelp members are seeking support for anxiety symptoms, and 69% of those reported an improvement in 6 weeks or less with BetterHelp. It's super easy to start. You just fill out a questionnaire and they'll match you with a therapist, usually in as little as 2 days. And if it's not the right fit, it's super easy and there's no additional cost to change therapist at any time. And throughout your experience, their customer support team is always there if you need help or have any issues at all. So click the link in the description below or go to betterhelp.com/VINwiki and you'll get 10% off your first month of therapy. So whether it's depression, anxiety, stress, whatever's going on in your life, you can get the help you need to live a better life with BetterHelp. And today, here's our top 10 Tesla car stories from over the years on VINwiki. Enjoy.
So I walk in and just go up to the manager and say, hey man, do you want me to just park this in the showroom? The whole story starts when I first saw the unveiling of the Tesla Cybertruck, which was an immediate meme. So I stayed up, it was like 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, earlier in California, and I was exhausted. I'm just catching the tail end of the Tesla unveiling. But when I saw the truck, my jaw literally dropped. I was laughing out loud in my bed, like half asleep. I thought it was a complete joke. When they threw the balls out the window and they broke, I thought that was the punchline, like, haha, okay, let's bring the real truck out. But they didn't. There was no real truck. That was the real truck. I went on their website. I saw the actual Tesla Cybertruck actually for sale. And I could not believe, I literally didn't sleep that night because of how unsettled I was that was the actual freaking Tesla Cybertruck. It blew my mind. In the days following the unveiling, I saw that there were 250,000 or something orders, which was insane. Like there's no way that Tesla's even gonna be able to make 250,000 trucks. But to see the traction behind the orders and to see the movement that was the Tesla Cybertruck, I knew that there was no choice but for us to recreate it. As a member of Gen Z, as a 22-year-old guy in 2019, this felt like the most 2019 thing I could possibly do. And me being somebody who's not mechanically inclined, I knew that I wasn't gonna be able to, machine cold steel together and do this unibody thing. So the next best thing that I could think of was cardboard and duct tape. So that's what we did. The goal was to make this Tesla Cybertruck and basically make a meme for the internet and just have it go absolutely viral. And then a couple of days later, we would record the entire thing and then release a video basically telling the story of how that truck was made. So that's what we did. So when I reserved the truck on Turo, my assumption was that this was a double cab with a short bed. Like that would have been the perfect truck to do this with, right? That's like the same sort of fit as the actual Tesla truck. Upon arriving to our actual rented truck, we realized that this was a single cab extended bed, which basically was worst case scenario. How are we supposed to find a piece of cardboard big enough to extend from the top of a single cab truck all the way to an extended bed? It was not gonna happen. On Turo, it cost us $95, I think, from the buyer to rent the truck for the day, which was a pretty steep price, I felt like, especially for the truck that we got. When we got the truck, it wasn't super clean on the inside. There was used batteries, pieces of like plastic something in the back, and a used copy of like Madden from 2014. So I was surprised to pay the $94, but listen, I was just happy to get a truck at that point. I'm somebody who is not afraid to go up to people at Home Depot and ask questions. So immediately when I got there, my question was, do you have anything long enough to go from the top of my truck all the way to the end of the bed? And they steered me toward the insulation aisle where they have giant sheets of like foam. And that was what we actually ended up using. So it was definitely redneck. It was definitely redneck. So for the next 4 hours, We got loads of cardboard. We got metallic in a can and just started spray painting cardboard and duct taping it to the truck. We used some foam board, and after 4 hours, many trips in and out of Home Depot, we had a finished product of what was the redneck Tesla Cybertruck. So after we finished the build, we thought that the next most reasonable thing to do would be to take it to the local mall where they also have a Tesla store. Getting the reactions of people who were already in love with Tesla and like the group of local Tesla fanboys, for us, was the funniest thing. So we wanted to make sure we got those reactions. So on the way from Home Depot to the mall, it was a 1.5 mile drive, which was supposed to take us 7 minutes. However, we had to go extremely slow in this truck. So it took us closer to 20 minutes with our hazards on. To make matters worse, it also started torrential rain downpour on the way over there. And you can imagine how a cardboard truck would react to rain. We're screaming, we are terrified in the car, thinking that our truck that we just spent 4 hours on was going to be destroyed before anybody could even see it. Immediately when we entered the mall, before we were even recording or anything, people's heads were turning. It was crazy. It was really interesting to see too, because you think of Tesla as this like young person's company and younger people are attracted to it, but kids all the way to your 85-year-old grandma, everyone's heads were turning, and people were freaking out. Pictures being taken, videos being taken, and that was success for us because we knew that those videos and photos were going to go viral on the internet, and they did. So we get to the Tesla store, and immediately my gut reaction, the funniest thing I could think to do is to try to sell this to the Tesla employees as the actual Cybertruck. So I walk in and just go up to the manager and say, hey man, do you want me to just park this in the showroom? How do you want me to pull it in here? And he dies laughing. He immediately knows that it's not, obviously. The funny part was that not everybody realized that though. Customers that were shopping for a potential Tesla started coming up to me and asking about the Cybertruck. They thought it was the real thing. They were sold on the idea that that was the real Cybertruck. A couple of guys thought that it was covered in cardboard because they were maintaining the low-key look of the body, even though it had been publicly released in Tesla's live event. But yeah, I spent some time goofing with the employees and talking them into the idea that this was the actual Cybertruck, and I had a blast, and I think they did too. The Tesla employees were getting a kick out of the fact that all their customers thought it was a Tesla truck, and they didn't even interrupt. They just let me talk them into this. It was the funniest thing. The truck was also illegally parked outside of the Tesla store, so on my way out, the security guard told me to move my truck and mentioned that it looked incredibly aerodynamic, which I thought was pretty funny. I think probably the funniest part of the entire story is how easy it was for us to make a Cybertruck that people believed. Because the design is so ridiculously easy, it's like 3 triangles and a truck, and that's it. That's all it takes. People believed it. It was nuts. So after getting kicked out of Tesla and getting kicked out of our parking spot, we thought the grand finale would be to get the Cybertruck valet parked in front of this upscale mall with the likes of McLarens, Lamborghinis, everything. You see every weekend there's Ferraris, super nice cars parked up there, and we thought it would be the funniest thing if we could get the Cybertruck parked up there too and start to get reactions. And that is exactly what we did. We backed the Cybertruck up directly next to this bright orange McLaren and got out of the truck and were stopped immediately by security. I talked to the head of security, and after some negotiating, after some slight deception, I will admit, we were able to get a shooting badge or a license to be able to shoot video there, and we literally parked it up in front right next to this McLaren for a half hour talking to people about the Cybertruck. We got all kinds of reactions. Again, anybody from the middle-aged dad to your local 16-year-old kid, everyone came up and asked questions about the Cybertruck. Luckily, I'm a Tesla fanboy myself, so I knew all the specs of the Tesla truck, answered questions like range, mileage, towing capacity, and convinced everybody that Elon had hand-delivered the keys of this truck to me, and I had driven it directly from California to here. Why? And why did people believe me? I don't know, but they did. Yeah, I was expecting to get a few offers on the truck, but nobody did. I think that they assumed that this was the one and only Cybertruck, and somehow they had been lucky enough to see it. Between the foam, between the cardboard, paint, everything, we probably spent $75 on all of the supplies it took to build the truck, which again is a testament to the simplicity of the Tesla truck design. It literally took $75 to turn a regular truck into a Tesla truck. So after about a half hour, everyone sort of had their fill. Everybody's had their Q&A time with me, the only Tesla truck owner in the United States. And we pull out the security super nice, and they tell us it's time to leave. After that, I take 150 gigabytes of footage. I spend 20 hours in my cave editing this video together, and after a couple days, release the video onto YouTube on my personal YouTube channel. Within literally 3 minutes, friends, fans, followers start tagging me in tweets, viral Instagram pictures, articles on the internet with hundreds of thousands of views, likes, and comments. And in that moment, I knew that our plan had worked. We had deceived the general public and the internet. I think articles called me things like the Tesla troll, the redneck Cybertruck owner. These were all titles that the internet had given me. There was one post that stuck out and had absolutely by far the most engagement, and that was a picture on the Instagram profile of my good friend Ed Bolian, who I did not know at the time. By some slim chance and turn of events, Ed was in the Apple store behind the Tesla shop that I was inside of, took a photo of the Cybertruck, and the picture went wild. It was the most engaged photo of anything that we had seen, and all of my car friends were tagging me on this photo. It was a lot. There were a lot of tags. So with Ed's picture, so with all the articles, photos, tweets, even TikToks floating around on the internet, we had realized that the goal had been achieved. We had absolutely trolled the internet. The truck is so easy to troll. I don't think that doing this was any kind of a slight towards Tesla. It wasn't like a political motive or anything like that. It was just a way for a couple of guys to have a good time on a Friday afternoon. And we did. We had a lot of fun. Being someone who hasn't previously spent a ton of time in the car community, seeing all of these articles on different car websites, publications was pretty crazy, and definitely steered me in a direction where I'm thinking more and more about like, what is the next project? Hopefully Tesla comes out with a Model Z or something that is super boxy too, and we can just recreate that. It's another easy follow-up. I think that we were so excited to put all of the cardboard onto the truck and make the Cybertruck that we never really thought about how are we gonna get this back to a normal truck? So after leaving the Avalon, this upscale mall, we realized that our truck rental return was in 30 minutes, and we quickly had to find a way to turn this back into a normal Ford F-150. So the quickest way that we could think to do that was to find our nearest large dumpster, and that was in the nearest Walmart shopping center. So we pulled around back really quick, and we literally in 5 minutes just went out of the truck and tore all the cardboard off, and just madmen running back and forth between the truck and the dumpster, throwing cardboard over our heads into this dumpster, getting back in the truck, and then taking off. So at 6:30, we returned the truck. That process was the craziest thing, and I feel like what we did with the truck was the most Turo thing you can possibly do. I'm riding home from the truck, and all I can think about in my mind is how easy it would be to use that platform to go rob a bank or something. I mean, to just get a car and go do anything you want with it, it is the best platform for committing a crime. So if you're looking to commit a crime, Turo has got you. Ironically, the only thing that the owner did manage to get angry about was the next morning I woke up to a series of messages about how I had accidentally left the keys in the ignition of the truck, and it had killed the truck's battery. So at 3 a.m., I feel so bad. The owner of this truck is jump starting the truck and going over to it, locking it, doing all this stuff. He charged me an extra $15, which I felt was a ridiculously fair fee for the inconvenience that I caused him. So if you're out there, I'm so sorry. That was not cool.
November 21st, 2019. I'm sure a lot of you were doing exactly what I was, watching your computer screens when Elon unveiled the Cybertruck. He had his chief designer, Franz von Holzhausen, or however it's called. He wore a shirt one size too small to throw the ball out the window, and it broke. And of course, it's an unforgettable moment. But also the specs were pretty unforgettable, because you're going to have 400 or 500 miles of range, $40,000 the base price for the Cybertruck, and it looked like some crazy thing from the future. I love the styling personally. I thought it was amazing. So I immediately, like 2 million other people, put a $100 deposit down, not once, but twice on the Cybertruck, thinking, okay, next year I'll get me a Cybertruck for 40 grand. And well, 2019, 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24, 2024, the Cybertruck finally comes to market. It's interesting, 2 years before that, there was the Tesla Roadster that people put $200,000 down to buy, but that still hasn't come out yet. So I considered myself lucky that the car I put $100 down actually showed up. And I feel like the wait to configure wasn't too bad because some people got their trucks at the end of 2023, I think were the first deliveries if they were in Texas and locally. So they were focusing on local, easiest, shortest delivery spaces and giving it to those people. They weren't really giving them out in order. And since Tesla has no dealership network, they didn't really care. It was the most efficient way to get the cars out. So finally, in the ensuing months, I got invited to configure and got my truck around June of 2024. But it was over $100,000, not $40,000. It had 300 miles of range, not 400 or 500, and they had the range extender, which is basically dropping a battery into the back, and that was supposed to add the range to get as advertised, but it gave up the truck bed space, so it was very weird and very, very expensive. So I didn't do that, but I was taking delivery of the Cybertruck. So excited for the YouTube videos and all that, thinking I was kind of late to the party, but still very excited because I personally loved the product, loved the way it looked, loved the idea of it. The steer-by-wire system was very innovative. The way the wiring, of course, the higher voltage and everything, a lot of innovative firsts with the truck, not just the styling. But delivery day was very anticlimactic because I go up and literally a guy half a mile down the street from me is taking delivery at the same time. They're behind making deliveries, and there's one angry customer who is getting a Model 3, I think, that has paint issues, and that is taking up everybody's time, all the delivery people, all the people at Tesla, dealing with one angry customer. So finally, when it comes to my turn, I've been waiting for 2 or 3 hours to take delivery of this truck. They just throw me the keys, which the keys is just a card or configuring it on your phone. And I was off. I had no idea how to work it. I had no idea how to put it in gear, no idea how to really do any of it, but I drove off and just learned as I went and learned very quickly that the range at 300 isn't as advertised because I had to stop and supercharge on the way home. But now I had my Cybertruck and I could start making my videos, which, you know, my usual video thing. I bought the cheapest, well, it wasn't the cheapest. I paid MSRP for the Cybertruck, but felt pretty good because right around, about a month or two before I bought it, the first Cybertruck sale ever was $240,000 for the first one. Flipped from 102 to 240, and I think a Porsche dealer in Florida bought it for that much. The next two, I think a week later, there was 2 of them. They sold for about $200,000. So about the time I bought it, they were selling for almost $200,000. So I was feeling pretty good, thinking, okay, I can make YouTube videos for a while and make money, not lose any money. It was a really good car for me as far as making videos. First, of course, the unveil. I bought the Cybertruck, but the one that really went gangbusters was tearing it apart with the Car Wizard, taking the frunk out, really digging into the thing, not really taking it apart all that much, but discovering some interesting engineering and the way that the frunk or behind the frunk is designed and how water and environment just gets in there. There's no secondary like wheel well to really stop all that from getting inside. And not only that, when I ran the windshield washer fluid would just dump into the interior behind there where all the electronics and things were all buzzing. It didn't seem like a very good thing. Also, when the Wizard wanted to check the cabin air filter, Wizard's my mechanic, he broke the tabs, just doing what anybody would do. It wasn't like he was doing anything wrong, just lightly pulling on the tabs. They're so brittle, they just snapped off in your hand on a brand new truck, which is great for me for YouTube when we discover all of this. And I think it's one of my highest grossing YouTube videos as far as AdSense of all time, like over $20,000. This one video made, which is insane. And all the other videos did really well. So I'm very happy in that sense. But very quickly, I discovered that I did not enjoy driving the Cybertruck. First of all, for the attention, because you were an instant celebrity and people were following you home, following you everywhere just to get a look at this thing, which is not an issue nowadays. But also, it was really cumbersome as far as the length of it. And even with the four-wheel steering, it was sort of hard to park. The visibility wasn't all that great. It wasn't that comfortable for a $100,000 car. You have one screen right here. There's no instrument binnacle. There's no like luxury features like a Mercedes S-Class that would cost the same amount of money. You have one screen sort of tacked on. Everything just feels kind of cheap. And then the stainless steel literally is sharp. I did cut myself a couple of times just on the door closing and little things here and there. And of course, there were all the idiots that were putting their hands in the doors and the frunk, and which I guess get your views any way you can, I suppose. Chop your fingers off. Why not? I didn't do it. After the videos, it sort of set in that I didn't want to keep this thing. And then I noticed the prices just plummeting on the Cybertrucks. Most recently, there was a guy who just got his Cybertruck totaled out who paid almost $200,000 for it. But then the insurance value was $80,000, $70,000, $80,000 was what he was going to get. And he still owed, I think, $170 or $80 and had no gap insurance. So I didn't want to get in that situation. So I thought, I need to get out of this Cybertruck as quickly as possible. And I realized the door was rapidly slamming shut for me to be able to get out of this without losing money. So I went around to different dealers. Gimme the VIN was one who's in Texas. He does a big auction with Manheim Wholesale Auction. And he wasn't buying them anymore because of the free fall in prices. This was the first guy to sell them for $240,000, then $200,000. But they were in free fall, and one of his reps, I guess, lost over 6 figures buying up 10 Cybertrucks from everybody at $150 or something like that, and then lost his butt. So they weren't doing it anymore. The other dealer who was interested in it before decided, we don't really want it anymore except for MSRP, which, okay, MSRP, but I paid sales tax and all that stuff, so it was still losing money. So I started working around, being my own Ed Bullion, trying to work a deal, and finally there was one dealer on the west side, and they were willing to give me $111,000 for it, which is about $10,000 over MSRP, but I had to buy a car from them. I was looking at a 2023 Cadillac Lyriq, which is Cadillac's mid-size electric SUV. And this thing was a debut edition. It was 1 year old. It had 9,000 miles on it. And it was traded in because the original owner got in a minor accident. And they have these beautiful crystal crazy light show grills. And it was a long wait to get that part. It was just kind of cracked or whatever. He decided to trade it in as is and let the dealer fix it. And then he drove off with something else. But the dealer, as they waited 3-4 months for that part, the Lyriq, catastrophic, unbelievable depreciation, as we all know with electric cars now, they were stuck. So they were willing to over-allow on the trade and then sell me this Lyriq that was $60-something thousand new for low 40s. And that had me into the Lyriq, since I paid $101 or $2 for the Cybertruck, into the mid-30s. So that made sense. I felt like if I wanted to sell the Lyriq really quick and didn't like it long term, I could sell it and recoup that way. So did the deal, and the Cybertruck sat at that dealership. First at $140-something thousand, $130, $120, $100. 4 or 5 months later, my Cybertruck was still on the lot. And I was actually able to go back and do another video saying my Cybertruck hasn't sold yet. And so I saw the managers, like the used car manager that bought the car, glaring at me as I was doing this vlog saying, my Cybertruck's still for sale. Look how smart I am. But we actually had a conversation about it when he was trading in. I told him, you need to sell this thing quickly. You can get 115, 120 right now. Don't get greedy, get rid of it, because these things are starting to go down. And he didn't listen and priced it to the moon because that's what his matrix said to do. And he thought he was really going to win something and ended up eating the car. At the last time I saw it advertised for sale, it was at $89,000. So that means the dealer was taking a $20,000 loss. And I don't think they made any money on me with the Lyriq because of the catastrophic depreciation there. So the Lyriq, it seemed like it was going to be a short-term thing, but actually it ended up being a car I've had for almost a year now. April's driving it around. We really like the ride. We like the quality, fit, and finish. It has all the luxury touches that were missing from the Cybertruck, and a better ride and easier to park and all that stuff. A little clunky in the electronics and the controls, obviously a long ways to go from there compared to Tesla and all their nice software, but overall a really nice vehicle. But for whatever reason, I decided that I needed to go back into Tesla. And it's been about 6-7 months since I sold my Cybertruck. And I realized the catastrophic depreciation on electric cars was applying to everything, including the Model S Plaid. So 1,000 horsepower on these things, 0 to 60 in a little over 2 seconds. And it was the fastest accelerating car in the world at the time. And $140,000 new. Now they're $40-something thousand. I found one, no accident history, 58,000 miles for $47,000, and bought it and thought, this is absolutely amazing. But in that short amount of time, the world has changed with the brand perception, with Tesla, with Cybertruck, and its CEO, Elon Musk, who was laughing years ago at the ball getting thrown at it, happy to be going to space and being a CEO. And now he is the first buddy to Donald Trump and in charge of the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, and going through doing all of his things. And obviously, half the country likes Trump, half the country hates Trump, and Elon's associated with him, so now 50% of people hate Elon. So when I post this video about buying this amazing depreciated car, 1 out of every 5 comments is about how terrible Elon is, how I bought a swastika car, how horrible I am for supporting Tesla and Elon for his evilness, which I had no idea, and I bought it used from an independent dealer. So now I'm feeling the peer pressure to sell this car that I actually kind of like, that makes sense to own because of how fun it is to drive, how fast, how smooth. It still has all the things I liked tech-wise about my Tesla, the latest autopilot. But now I'm being compared to Nazis and stuff. So I don't know what to do.
Their septic tank pops and we get covered in poop. Back in the days I was in high school, I got news and heard about Alex Roy's run across the country in his E39 M5, and of course broke the record, and that was such an amazing thing to me. Of course, we've all seen the Cannonball Run movie, and everyone had thought about Cannonball in that way and as a fun film, but it really, in this sort of modern age, can be so much more, and it is actually a run that's still breakable. So that was a light bulb moment for me. Of course, I was still too young at the time and had no car to do it and no license. So I said, one day I'm going to attempt a run like this. And I really, had dreamed about it. When Ed set the run in 28 hours, 50 minutes, I had pretty much the worst day ever. So I was sitting in my college dorm room. I remember exactly where I was when I saw the news articles, laying on my dorm room bed, waking up, and I see this guy, and he had shattered my dreams. and this is a run that I believe is pretty much unbreakable without anything crazy excessive happening. So, I knew my chances of breaking the Cannonball were pretty much done, and that's where I had left it for years. I'm a big fan of technology and innovation when it comes to transportation, and electric cars started to come out in wild success with Tesla with the Model S. In 2012, I didn't think much of it, but I thought pretty cool that there's a different way for someone to travel around. I'm not a save the environment kind of person. I just thought it was interesting that there's a technology that allows you to not burn fossil fuels. I started to research more about Teslas. I remember going on my first test drive one when my father was thinking about one, and really encouraged him to get one. He was the first in the family to drive electric. With the advent of electric cars, I think there's an opportunity to break a new record for Cannonball. Of course, Alex Roy has set multiple records with electric, but Tesla had just updated some charging profiles. I said, I think we can do this. I was actually sitting on the beach in the Dominican Republic about 3 weeks before the run when I had decided to set the record. And I'd flown to California the following week to at least time myself into Los Angeles, into the Portofino. I wanted to see what that trip was like in terms of timing myself, so I knew not to make any wrong turns, etc. So I have a Tesla Model 3 long range that is the most efficient version of the Tesla cars. It is lowered down slightly so that we can get a little more range for each charge. And then we had the car prepped, and it was time to get our co-drivers together, our scouts together, and do the run. We picked a date in the end of July 2019 to do the run, and everyone backed out. My co-driver had an interview that he could not miss. Our scouts kind of all fell out, and I decided to find my co-driver, Matthew Davis, to come with me. I found Matt years ago through the Mini Cooper community. We were at an event, and we've sort of stayed in contact over the years, and I knew he had been wanting to do a Cannonball type event. So I texted Matt on Snapchat, and I said, hey, how does a Cannonball run in an electric car sound? He said, done. Where do I show up? Great. I had my co-driver. This was 3 days before the run. So we meet at my house in Raleigh. We drive up to New York, test all the systems, make sure the car is working okay. We prepared the car really just by putting on the factory aerodynamic wheel options. We lowered it by about 2 inches or so it actually sits quite low, so it's more efficient. From an electronic standpoint, there really wasn't much. We had a CB radio, we had Waze, Escort Max 360C radar detector, and eyeballs looking forward constantly. Our methodology for the trip was to travel quickly in between chargers. There's no set cruising speed that we had tried to achieve, just anything pretty much under 120 miles per hour was a good speed for us to not sort of outrun the negative effects of having to charge up faster. After we had the car prepped, we ran to the Red Ball garage, we left with about 90% battery charge, and we ripped it out of New York. We made it outside of the tunnel in about 5 or 6 minutes, very quick. We hit pretty much green lights, but then I made a wrong turn. And we're heading south when we need to head west. So we recover from that relatively quickly. It's foot to the floor all the way through Pennsylvania until I have to make a move to pass a camper. Now, we are very focused on safety on our run. That was paramount. We did not want to, sort of fly by people and make them angry or put anyone in a dangerous situation. However, there was a camper that was going extremely slow in the left lane, and I make a move ahead of time to go in the right lane. As we're going around a left-hand corner, I'm on the outside lane passing them, which is probably the most dangerous thing we had done on the run. Their septic tank pops, and we get covered in poop on the car. After we were just covered in crap from this RV, right after we're flying its foot to the floor well over 100 miles per hour, when we notice we're coming up on some cars and we slow down, a Ford Explorer drives over an object, and there was no time for us to get out of the way. And we hit the object, and I thought it had torn off the front bumper. It looked like a goose that had been roadkill. It was a big bird, and that thing made a big noise. We had a couple little rattles after that, and then everything quieted down. We never stopped. We just carried on. We had a really solid run up until about Ohio, which then we started to get in some denser traffic. And that may have been a result of leaving potentially at the wrong time for our run, but it was dense traffic and we just put the car on autopilot and had to be patient. It got really bad as we started to pull into Indianapolis, where I don't know if there was tornado warnings, but there was some serious weather coming down on us. It turns out 2 highways had actually completely shut down and funneled themselves onto ours. We decided to divert and charge the car a little bit longer than we needed to, of course, because we'd be sitting to it in traffic. And we merged back on the highway after our longer charging stop, and pretty much just had to put the car in park. We sat in 1 to 5 mile per hour traffic for a really long time. It must have been 2 to 3 hours of just creeping along. And then as soon as we got out of Indianapolis, the skies were perfect, and we put the hammer down and made up time for the rest of the trip. As we were coming into Ohio, our initial estimates were that we were tracking well ahead of the previous run by about 9 hours. And the traffic is what really killed our run. By the time we actually got to the end of Indianapolis, we were almost on track for the previous run. That's how much time this all took up. As we're driving across the country, we obviously stop and charge. I believe we hit 26 different superchargers, and we pulled in pretty much empty and charged to about 50% when the car starts to taper our charge rate. It all worked rather well. We had some heat as we started to get out west, but as we're pulling into California, we had an option to stretch our remaining charge to Barstow or divert to a charger in Yermo. Now, Yermo, we have to go a little bit north, and then we can jump on the highway and head into LA. We decided to drive quickly, go a little bit out of the way, and charge up in Yermo. We exit the highway and we see a train coming down the road, and we didn't think anything of this. We said, wow, that's pretty cool, container train. I start to speed up and it's doing about 80 miles an hour. This train is really moving. We look down at the navigation and it turns out we need to be on the other side of this train. Now, I'm not one to risk anything too crazy. We were not in the position to race a train, and of course, we would not win against a train in an accident. However, I put my foot down to the floor. We're low on battery, which means the car isn't that quick. We make it to our turn, turn right. Of course, there are the little railroad crossing signs with the barriers. Nothing is lit up, but I'm full power over the railroads mid-air. We launched this thing as the red lights turn on to shut the barriers on the train. And we made it perfectly. No risk of safety, but it was a cool moment to be mid-air when the lights turned on. And of course, we made it to the charger with 0% remaining. As we're coming into Los Angeles, we make a lane change, maybe a little close to a car that happened to be a lifted Dodge Ram. Now, I'm not sure if we angered the driver or got him excited, but he took off like a stabbed rat. He starts flying in and out of traffic, making moves, and I'm right on his tail. I'm going to use him as a barrier to get us through Los Angeles to Redondo Beach as quickly as possible. And he led our route into LA past some pretty slow-moving cars. We made some really good time coming into the Portofino. As we exit the highway and come into the Portofino, we get stuck at a lot of traffic lights, and we end up finally making it through. As we approached the exit, we knew that we were exactly 5 hours ahead of the run that at least we knew about. We pull in right to the entrance, slam on the brakes, stop all the systems, and then it was a feeling of relief that we had just broken the record officially. Our moving average for the trip was 76 miles per hour. Overall, 63, and that equates to about 7 hours and 48 minutes stopped charging or at traffic lights. We did hit the maximum speed of 140 miles per hour that the car is limited to many times throughout the run. Being able to hold onto this record that I've dreamed about for so long has been really an impactful moment on my life. This is a record that I know is going to be broken soon. It's not something that I'm going to hold on to forever, but it's amazing to be in the fraternity of lunatics finally, and to have these amazing relationships that have come from the Cannonball.
I actually have 52 Cybertruck reservations. When I was working at Tesla, I had the opportunity to buy a second Tesla at a discounted rate, and that was incredibly rare for Tesla. It was the end of the year in 2018 going into 2019, and they did a, hey, you can get a premium interior and full self-driving software, basically $10,000 off your $50,000 vehicle if you want to upgrade. And because I already had about 50,000 miles on my first Model 3, I was like, well, that's a great opportunity to get behind a dual motor, something that's better in the snow at pretty much no cost to me. So I bought a second Model 3, and once again, I hadn't yet sold my first Model 3. So in that 1 month when I was kind of unwrapping the orange off of it, I thought, why don't I try out Turo? Actually, a colleague at Tesla said, you've got these two cars, why not try hosting on Turo? So I immediately put it on Turo to kind of buffer that time and that financial situation. And the very first month, the car brought in more money than the car payments. And I wasn't even really trying yet. And so I was like, well, there's definitely some possibility here. And over the next few months, I kind of wanted to start A/B testing. So I bought another Model 3. And so I had two Model 3s on the platform that were priced differently. And the photos were slightly different. And I wanted to see what happens if I tweak this. And I was starting to add extras and learn more about what it was like to rent out Teslas. Eventually, I put all three of those on Turo because I realized I didn't need my own car. Worst case scenario, I could take public transit. And with the rates and the frequency that the cars were getting rented out midweek, I had a car almost any day of the week to get to work. So it was never really an issue. So I would just have all three on there, A, B, and C testing, and really learning how to operate the business. And then at the start of the pandemic, I decided to leave Tesla, traded in that first Model 3 for two Model Ys. So I then had two Model 3s and two Model Ys to really get to know what people are looking for. Are people really looking for SUVs, electric SUVs? Are they looking for sedans? Is there a preference there that's going to make any material difference? Is it worth spending that extra money? And then, slowly we've just started working with some of my friends up in Portland and Seattle to really collect data about different markets. And the end goal, I actually have 52 Cybertruck reservations. And so my intent with some of this is to actually start just a massive electric vehicle Cybertruck fleet prior to or maybe concurrently with Tesla's dream of a robotaxi fleet. And so I'll buy as many as make sense at the time. I wanted to reserve more than what we needed, but we reserved 52 Cybertrucks to start a West Coast fleet of rentals. And that's what we're working towards. And we're looking for investors to make that a reality. We've already started a few conversations, but the goal right now is to prove out the business model to eventually justify a West Coast or maybe even nationwide fleet, almost like a silver car, like what they did with Audis. The deposit per vehicle for the Cybertruck to lock in your price for both the vehicle and full self-driving was only $100. So it's a $5,000 investment. Tesla says it's fully refundable, and they've promised to lock in the price. It's an option on full self-driving. It's an option on the Cybertruck. It was kind of a no-brainer for me. And I've made videos actually talking about just how obvious this is to me, partly to, again, attract investors to the model that I will have hopefully done a little bit of work proving out. But now we're seeing other big players enter the market like Hertz. So it'll be really interesting to see how the electric vehicle rental market develops and if there's still a niche for smaller players like me, or if I can become a big player with significant investment and business operations that I'm hopefully working to establish now as we grow. So in the last 3 years, I've hosted about 500 rentals, both across my account, and I also help host vehicles for my friend up in Portland. He has 2 vehicles down with me in San Francisco. With very little experience with any damage, people take care of these cars. They respect kind of the position in the market that Tesla's in and seem to already know a fair amount about it before they get behind the wheel. So we've only had actually 1 major damage claim and 2 kind of fender benders into bollards, but otherwise it's been a pretty frictionless experience hosting, again, over 500 trips. Tesla has been a bit cagey with their delivery estimates. Initially, it was supposed to start already in terms of deliveries, but what we're really tracking towards is watching what's going on with the Austin facility. We know that Tesla has started their beta development on Cybertruck. Someone recently spotted one out in Merced. And I on my way back from the Cannonball, I swung by Merced to see if I could see anything. Didn't see anything related to the Cybertruck, but saw some other stuff. So I know where they're operating there. But yeah, people are basically looking at the Austin facility saying they're going to start with Model Ys and then they're going to do Cybertrucks out of that building. And I think there's still a small chance that they start manufacturing Cybertrucks from Austin this year, but likely we'll see probably mid next year will be when they actually start Cybertruck deliveries. And hopefully, because I've got at least 20 or 30 of my reservations were pretty early, hopefully we'll be some of the earlier people to receive some Cybertrucks and begin to establish that brand in that space as the kind of the place to rent a Cybertruck in the West Coast. Yeah, so far the brand of the kilowatts is kind of a net negative financially. We're not making enough money to sustain ourselves, but we are starting to see that turning around. I do manage that rental car fleet as well as the YouTube channel and a building where I started filming in the YouTube channel. Now I primarily use that building for storage, and it's just an office space. We've got 2 available offices and 5 rented out offices in San Francisco that helps kind of buffer some of my expenses. It's actually just all ex-Tesla people that have their own businesses now. One is a baby rental equipment, basically helping parents access cribs and cradles and whatever else for short-term basis, because that way they don't have to buy it and then sell it or hand it down. And then the other one is a funded startup trying to basically build the ideal RV to tow behind an EV. It'll be a pop-up hard shell. There's some other details I can't get into, but they're a funded startup that is hiring right now, trying to make this a reality in the next couple of years to line up with, the Rivian, the F-150, and the Cybertruck to be the best option for people that want to RV with their EV. Early on, my parents were kind of slow to adopt some of the more forward-looking technologies, but me being me, I slowly convinced them to get in some of the earlier iPhones. Eventually, moved our whole family from PC to Mac, and I think that same thing has kind of played itself over with electric vehicles. They had seen kind of what I had shown them with Apple products and how just that streamlined experience was better, and how when Tesla was coming to the market, my dad was looking to replace his large SUV and didn't really want to go the same way that everyone else had gone, and had already invested in the company of Tesla and thought, maybe this is something. And so we really talked about what should the future look like, and it was clear that that's what Tesla was developing. So We bought one of the early Model S's. We've got VIN 967, so one of the signature red Model S's. And so we've had that now for several years, and he won't part with it. When the Model 3 first came out, I told him, you've got to try this Model 3. At least it has parking sensors. Your old Model S doesn't even have parking sensors. But it charges so much faster. It's much more fun to drive. He's like, I just kind of like my old Model S. Even though it has kind of like toadstool type seats, I like my Model S. And so my mom in 2017, before I got my Model 3, she got a Model S as well. Eventually, like selling her company cars when she retired, that was kind of her gift to herself, was buying a Model S as well. I thought she was going to get an X, and I really wanted us to have S3X, and then eventually my sister get a Y, but that didn't happen. She bought a Model S as well. They've got their 2 Model S's. And I've, since doing this Cannonball, called my dad up twice and said, you really should consider, you or mom need to maybe sell your car. I know your car being VIN 967, that's potentially going to be a collector's item. The Roadsters are starting to climb in value. The early Model S's, especially the first 1,000 with that signature VIN and tag, you might be able to get more money for it in the future than you will now. Maybe you garage that car and get behind the wheel of my reserved $80,000 long-range Model S because it's already worth $95,000. You buy it, you don't like it, you sell it on the open market, and you don't lose anything on taxes. So I'm thinking they should do that because they've slowly, again, adopted the Model S. They love it, but there's so much better electric vehicles on the market now that they should maybe upgrade again.
The car is bananas. Everybody that's in the car community is going to hate me for this one because, I was a hater of EVs until I bought one and then owned one. So, you either put down your fax machine and pick up the new technology or you're left behind. And this day you stop learning is really the day you start to become obsolete. So we had a big strategy of creating an EV community as part of the racetrack at Atlanta Motorsports Park because we know that it's coming. So I bought a Tesla Plaid, and the car's just a effing rocket ship. I mean, it shouldn't be street legal. It really shouldn't. And I drive race cars, so that's saying a lot for me. And I just think that the car's superbly dangerous and superbly fast. I thought, gosh, it'd be very cool to have a complete EV community at the racetrack because we know it's coming and it's a way to be able to evolve and innovate and not become obsolete. So I started down the road with Tesla originally. We had heard that they'll put in chargers at your track, and these were level 1 at the time. So I reached out to Tesla and they said, yeah, we'll put chargers at your track and we'll actually pay to install them. And I was like, okay. And they said, how many do you want? And I said, 12. I was joking. So they sent me 12 chargers and we installed 12 chargers. But there's a funny story. They said, send a quote with the chargers. We'll pay the electrician. So I got a couple quotes from the electricians. Then I went back to them and I said, listen, we'll give you this, but you got to keep the quote the same. But we need you to install a 50 amp charger port plug right next to the Tesla charger so that we can use them for RVs when they're not used for Teslas, and we can sell them for that. So that's kind of how it started. It was, okay, I can bring Teslas here. They can charge at the track. They'll buy things at the track. Then it evolved from there to where I said, all right, let's do something that we don't think anybody's done. Let's put 10 level 3 DC superchargers. So I called a company called Indigo Energy and I said, will you partner with us? They said, yeah. And I said, will you install them for free? And they're like, hell no. And I said, what about the charger company? And that was Autel. Can they, give us the chargers and work together? So we got on the phone with all the executives at Autel and ended up putting a deal together that we put 10 level 3 superchargers in. That's probably $400,000 worth of infrastructure for $10,000. I said, okay, now we've got the chargers. We need to evolve this into a race series. We need to bring people in. So I reached out to Ben at Unplugged Performance in California. Said, hey, Ben, I know you run a race series called Tesla Corsa. You run it over in Europe. You run it over here. Bring it here. Let's try it. in the discussions with him, I was thinking, okay, maybe we evolve another business I'm a partner in called Primal Motorsports into EV performance, basically improving the EV cars to be able to make them more like track cars. And so he and I were in discussion. He said, well, why don't you just buy a car and let's try it. Let's go down the road. I bought a Model 3 Performance from him, and they put every effing thing you can think on this car. It's got a roll cage. It's got carbon ceramic brakes on it all the way around. It's got a racing suspension. They've hacked the computer. It's got all this stuff that hangs out of the dash, different differentials. They broke apart the diffs and put those on there, racing tires, carbon fiber front end to make the car lighter, rear splitter, rear wing, diffusers. I mean, the car is bananas. And it's about 3 to 4 seconds faster a lap than a GT3 RS. And it is supposedly a tenth of the operating cost. I can't verify or validate that yet. But we had a guy, one of the most winning drivers in American history, Randy Popes, drive it and did a review on it and just spoke exceptional about it and its performance and its handling. So the idea was for me to buy this car, have Randy drive it, do a review in it. I did about 20 laps in this car, and then sell it to a member for exactly what I bought it for, a little under, and to be able to create that impulse buy to be able to build the EV racing series at AMP, because I think it would be exceptional because the cars are so fast and they actually handle exceptionally well, and the cost to operate is inexpensive. So it was a way to really create a new market and be innovative at AMP rather than just kind of sit on the old ICE motor kind of way of looking at things. So just another shiny object for me, really. The first time I took this car out on track, I was like, what in the hell is this? It was so weird. It's very strange because the drivetrain in a car is about 78 to 85 decibels in a standard, internal combustion engine car. And then obviously the motor is loud too. So you hear nothing really relative to the car, to the suspension, to the tires. If you have racing slicks on, obviously they're like gum and they just spray the inside of the wheel wells with rocks when you go into certain areas of the racetrack. So it was really interesting to drive the car because you could hear everything, and it's eerie and it's quiet and it's just you and the noise of the car and the suspension and the tires and the rocks spraying on the inside of the wheel wells and the car gaining or losing grip and the diffusers dragging in certain parts of the racetrack, which is what you do hear on an internal combustion engine car. But I felt weirdly digitally connected to the car. It's different where in an internal combustion engine car, you do feel connected to the car. But in here, this was just a different way. When I got my Plaid, for the first 2 months, it felt like I had metallic in my mouth because I think of it's so much metal. It's so much, all the batteries, everything in this car. And it was really weird. So it's really a completely different experience. And then the torque when driving this car and coming out of the corners and things like that, and what you can do with the car comparative to a internal combustion engine, because, you just don't have that torque always, where ICE motor's going to have it, at 4,000 or 6,000 or whatever range it's really peaking at. This thing's just, it's a hell of a lot of fun. It's a handful. It's completely different it's an all-wheel drive. Once, you have it all set up with the computer, and they've hacked the computer to make it, have a lot more slips. You have a lot more control, so the computer's not trying to overthink the driving, so you can drive and push the car, and, where you need to break the car loose a little bit and free it up, you can, where with all those nannies on it, you can't. It's a hell of a lot different than the Plaid. The Plaid, I can, within a lap, this red screen of death comes up that brakes are overheating, because it's so fast and it's so underbroke, because it's not designed to have 4 people in it running around a racetrack, 150 miles an hour. So it's completely different. That Model 3 Ascension is really special. It's really cool. It's had Randy drive it, it's had me drive it, and then it's had some ride-alongs for a corporate event. But right now it's sitting upstairs in the showroom at the racetrack with some for sale signs on it. And if somebody doesn't buy it soon, either I'm going to start driving it, or we talked about doing a raffle with the car, linking up with people that are famous YouTube people or whatever, and coming up with a way to be able to put that car out there, get awareness, bring some of the money back in, bring awareness to the racetrack and to the EV racing side of things, because I think it's really special and important to look at that and not to shy away from it, because it's coming. Or a version of it is coming. And so again, I really like shiny objects and new stuff. So I thought it was cool as hell. It was an impulse buy.
To this date, it is the highest paid public price for a Tesla product. So I've been with Sotheby's Motorsport since before we even launched. We launched in August in conjunction with Car Week back in 2023. I joined on a couple months before that. It's been a pretty good ride. We get to see a lot of really cool stuff. We get offered a lot of strange stuff as well. So when Tesla first started rolling out with the Cybertrucks and Cyberbeasts, obviously everyone's talking about them. It looks like a giant stainless steel fridge rolling down the highway. You can't miss it. Everyone's got an opinion on these things. At the time, there was a pretty substantial waiting list to get one. Now, there were two versions. There was the Foundation Series Cybertruck, and then if you wanted more power, you go for the Cyberbeast. Tri-motors, gobs of torque, moves faster than anything that heavy has any business doing. These things haven't hit the streets yet. Everyone's talking about them. And we get a call. I've got one coming in. I want to sell it. That's not a problem. We can do that for you. When's it coming? I don't know. All right. So now we got to figure out, how are we going to sell this truck? How are we going to get it up? We want to be first to market. No one sold a Cyberbeast yet. Very first one. But we don't know when it's coming. At the same time, we want to make sure we're doing the promotion we need. We want to make sure we can get photos set up and all of that. So, okay, we're going to go out on a limb. We're going to take some guesses, and we got some stuff set up. The call comes in again. Hey, this is the day I'm getting my truck. And we say, all right, cool. Now it's time for us to go to work. We actually book an airstrip in Northern California, and we send a photographer out there, and we shoot the truck, and we get some video of it going into beast mode, launching down the runway. It is an incredible sight to see these things just take off. Whether you love these things or hate them, the one thing you can't deny is that they are quick. We get all our media, we get everything queued up, and now it's time to light the candle. We put out the press release, the auction goes live, all these media outlets start picking it up, and we get a little bit of a firestorm. We're going to do a 1-week auction on it. We want to make sure that we can end it fairly quickly. Again, no one else is going to beat us to market and close. First mover advantage is the most important thing here. As more and more bids start coming in, more attention starts coming in, bidding quickly jumps past the original MSRP, and then it keeps going up and it keeps going up and it keeps going up. And then we crack 200 grand on a truck that sticker I think was about 127, 128. Sellers got to be feeling pretty good at this point. At the time, Tesla was threatening about a $30,000 penalty if you flip the truck. Now, to this day, have they enforced that? Not to my knowledge. But at the very least, the seller has that in the back of his mind that he's got to budget that in when he sells this thing. So we're getting close. He's not quite ready to sell it yet. And as bids keep coming in, we get a couple guys that really towards the end of it are the only two left. And they start trading blows back and forth. We get to the final day. Standard process for us, we want to be very active when we sell cars. We pick up the phone, we talk to our buyers, we want to know who they are, what makes them tick. We really want to build these client relationships with them and get to know them. So I talked to both these guys, and sometimes they'll keep their cards close to their chest. You know, they don't really want to tip off what they're going to pay. Other guys, here's my number. This is what I'm going to get. All right. And so I'm talking to this one guy, one of the bidders, and I kind of get the sense he's the one who's going to win. He's determined. He really wants one. He doesn't want to wait. And on top of that, he's got a lot of money, which certainly helps in a case like this. We're getting down into it, and then all of a sudden, a bid for $250,000 comes in. Everybody is just looking around, and our team's chat is buzzing. Guys are figuring out, oh, people's minds are breaking. And when it's all said and done, timer hits 0. This guy wins the bid. We have our buyer premium thrown in there. All said, he's paying $262,500 for a Tesla Cyberbeast. Very first one ever sold. I give him a call. Congratulations, it's your truck. He's ecstatic. The first question is, which house am I going to ship it to? Naturally, as one would think when you buy your $250,000 Tesla. All said and done, he got the truck, thrilled with it. So obviously, when you sell something for record money like that, you're going to get a lot of attention and a lot of people who will want you to sell theirs. And being that this was the very first one, there's always going to be a bit of a bump based on that. And we knew that's a result that wasn't going to get duplicated because more and more trucks are starting to come to market every single day. While we work as quickly as possible to get listings up in a timely manner, the market on these things was so sensitive and dropping day by day, we decided to let things cool off, and we wanted to stabilize before we brought any more on. At the end of the day, we set world record money for any Tesla, including any Roadsters or any other models. To this date, it is the highest paid public price for a Tesla product. For what the Cybertruck and Cyberbeast is, it had become so much ingrained in the zeitgeist. And it's so much of the moment, this is what's going on. It fit into our wheelhouse in that it's a vehicle that has some interest, not necessarily in the collector sense, but in the I want to own this thing for fun sense. You know, is there really any practicality to a Cybertruck? I'll leave that for other people to debate. But in this particular case, we had a handful of people who had this absolute desire, and whether or not they were car people, they wanted this thing because culturally, that's what was going on. They were relevant. And so, you know, we knew that it's an opportunity for us to expand our reach and get in front of people that may not normally be looking at these kinds of cars and expand the Somo name.
I have never owned an internal combustion engine car of my own. So in 2017, while I was just 1 year into my tenure working at Tesla as an intern, I bought a Model 3 and immediately sent it down to Unplugged Performance down in LA, had them kind of wrap it for me, make it a unique color. And a week later, I flew down to LA and autopilot wasn't even working right, but we set off on our Cannonball run. My first attempt ever at a Cannonball run. I had basically been following the stories of what it was like and saw that with the Model 3 having newer battery cells and a much faster charging curve would be able to beat anyone that had ever done it before. So we set off knowing that we had a high probability of actually setting the record. And so me and my friend who also worked at Tesla at the time just kind of set off as fast as we reasonably could. Without much speeding though, we were easily able to take the record from Bradley D'Souza and Jordan Hart. It was just so much faster charging that we could really casually drive across the country and prove what electric vehicles could do then. And relatively easily, we set a time in 2017 of 51 hours and 17 minutes. The Model 3 was my first personal vehicle ever. I had borrowed cars from my parents while I was in college and high school, but I had never purchased a car before the Tesla. And that was something, especially once I kind of knew what electric vehicles were doing and when they'd be kind of coming to the point that I could afford one. I really wanted that $35,000 Model 3, and I ended up spending $56,000 on my first vehicle. So almost my entire post-tax salary for my first year at Tesla went into my actual Tesla, because that was just the car that I had to have. And again, to do the Cannonball and to really understand what Tesla was doing, I wanted to have one of the first ones. I fortunately had enough money invested in Tesla where it made a difference to me. Having my career and my investments in Tesla, I wanted to know, is the product really what they're preaching? And is this company really going to be successful in the way that they think they will? Because while the Model S and X were great, that wasn't really a mass market car. That wasn't really delivering upon their mission. And so when they finally were delivering a car that was aligned with their mission, I wanted to see, is this really going to work? Because they had to sell hundreds of thousands to be successful as a company. Otherwise, honestly, they were going to go out of business if they did not sell that car well. And once I saw how great it was, it just hardened my conviction that electric vehicles and Tesla was going to be successful. I have never owned an internal combustion engine car of my own. I've driven my parents' Toyota MR2 Spider for several years, as well as a Lexus LX470. So I had the almost polar opposites in terms of a tiny gas mid-engine sports car and a big SUV, which is great for what I was looking for. When I was working at Tesla, I'd had my parents' Lexus up in Oregon. When I went to school, we'd go up to the mountains in a big SUV, and then I'd come back to California for my internship, and I'd be driving a little sports car. It was pretty great. It was a good life. And then at the end of the day, we ended up selling both of those to CarMax for $2,000 each, which I think a lot of car fans would say that Lexus LX470 could have been an Overlander, and that MR2 Spider could have been a track car. And I wanted to buy them both, but what ended up happening is we hadn't sold those two cars yet when I bought my Model 3. I drove my Model 3 around for a month, and it was the day before I was taking them to CarMax. I was like, I should really try both these out again. And I got into the MR2 Spider. I was excited to go through the Steptronic shifting again, and I was waiting for the gears to shift. It's just so slow. And obviously the car doesn't have a lot of horsepower, but the transmission, the time that takes to shift gears, I was just like, I could be a quarter mile ahead by now. So I didn't want to drive it anymore. It changed what I thought vehicles could be, because I didn't really know performance. I just know what a tiny sports car with a loud engine right behind you felt like, and then I knew what like a large SUV felt like. But when I had the Model 3, it was the perfect blend of both. I want really what Model Y ended up becoming. That's really more of the size of a vehicle that is ideal for my lifestyle. But the 3 at the time was, I couldn't have been happier. Now, again, with the Model S being so much better, it's not the step change that it used to be with the Model 3, but still with better charging and kind of efficient planning. There's also more 250 kilowatt stations than ever before out on the road right now. So we were able to charge faster at those stations and set a time of 42 hours and 17 minutes. One of the most exciting things for me about our new time is that when you type into Google the Portofino Hotel to the Red Ball Garage, it says you'll do it in about 42 hours. And effectively, we've now brought electric vehicles to parity with an ICE car, because if you drive quickly and charge quickly, you can do it in the same time it would take the average person to drive an ICE car across the country. So the tool that we use to plan our trip is a Better Route Planner. It's a tool that a lot of EV road trippers will use to pre-plan their trips, and you can mess with a whole bunch of variables such as wind speed, charge state, battery degradation. You can do quite a bit in there, and it looks even at weather, existing or estimated weather, to help establish like what you should expect for your drive. For anyone that's driven an EV, your car may say you've got 300 miles of range, but if you're going uphill in the cold, you're not going to achieve 300 miles. So driving quickly across country, you're obviously not going to get your estimated range. And so the car is not going to do as good of a job of estimating your actual range. So we used a Better Route Planner to pre-plan our entire trip, including every single charge stop, looking at what charge we should expect that we need to get to our next stop. Because if the car said, hey, you're good to go at 40% and we drove too fast, we might not even make it to the next charger. So we did everything we could to pre-plan to make sure instead of charging to those 40% metrics, we'd charge to 52 just so we could drive more aggressively. And it really is a matter of balancing efficiency with speed for these cars, because again, you start to lose out on charge speed as the battery fills up. Our goal was to maximize our charge speed. We often found that the best way to do that was unplugging around 50%. And that was also conveniently where Tesla has spaced out their chargers, allowing for the older vehicles that have about 200 miles of range or 250 or so to make it between chargers without fear of running out at normal highway speeds. The yoke is interesting. It was something that I like when you're in a straightaway, and it honestly isn't a problem with kind of minor highway driving. Those turns are never really a problem. It was a little bit frustrating sometimes when you're backing into a charging spot. And honestly, the only other time that I really even noticed I was driving with the yoke, well, I guess 2 other times. One is when I was using autopilot at 93 miles per hour. It's not even the yoke shape, it's the thickness to the yoke. It's not a round grip. It is kind of a thick grip. And so when I'm like cradling it, it's kind of a weird grip when you're cradling the wheel and just supporting it on autopilot or just cradling it, period. Right at the start line, we found that the driver's door didn't want to shut. Somehow the door handle sensor always detected something was pulling it open. So we repeatedly had to shut it until it just shut up, until it stopped. So on the way there, it would open itself. Like we'd be getting in, we'd unplug from the charger, and the door would open itself. Just a crack, but it wouldn't go into drive. So we had to shut it again, shut it again, shut it again. Sometimes what we'd actually do is we'd have the passenger unplug just so that we could have already shut the driver's door minutes earlier, just to make sure that we could take off when it was time, because that definitely ate maybe 10 or 15 minutes on our overall time to New York. And then I learned via an employee at Tesla how to basically reset the door. And once we reset it, the door handle wouldn't pop out. And the new problem was the door wouldn't open. So the driver's door, we had to press on the door handle an unknown number of times. Sometimes it was 1 time, sometimes it was 30 times. It was just repeatedly tapping it. It did not seem as if firmness mattered, whether it was light or a firm tap. Some consecutive number of times tapping that door handle, and it would eventually open the door the same way that it had previously forced itself open. It would finally just release, and then we'd get in. So we'd sometimes leave the window down or open it from the passenger side, but from the exterior of the vehicle, we had massive problems with that door handle during our run. The only other issue that we had with our specific vehicle was the hood latch gave us a warning. It claimed that it was opening and it wasn't. It never prevented us from driving, fortunately, but it definitely warned us that it needed service, because we'd be out of charger and it would look like the car was talking with the animation just opening and closing. So this Model S could have been purchased for about $80,000 if you reserved it early. But if you were to reserve it today, it's going to be $95,000 because Tesla's slowly marched up that price. So with the wheels and tires that we ran, somewhere between $80,000 and $95,000. Having the unlimited miles made it totally worth it, and especially for a car of that caliber, it was worth it. But it was still more expensive than what I was hoping to do. I was hoping to buy my Model S for $80,000. Rent it out on Turo for a couple months, do the Cannonball run, and sell it for $90,000. And maybe we'll still buy one, but it definitely probably will not be used for another Cannonball. Tesla versus Taycan, Tesla versus Lucid. There's definitely an efficiency, a luxury sedan race at hand. And I think that Tesla offers what they believe to be the best well-rounded solution. And there's definitely variations on that. Lucid's going for more of the overall luxury and trying to preach that luxury story. And as a result, with them having not as good of a charging infrastructure because they're leaning on Electrify America, just like Porsche is, they're going to have to compensate, and they're compensating with range and efficiency. And so that's an interesting take on luxury when it's more about range and efficiency. And then the Porsche, I think, is a more sporty option as well. So you really have either end of Tesla covered in terms of the higher end markets. And so I think Tesla kind of knows that and knows who their customer is, and their customer cares mostly about that total experience package, like just being relatively simple so that they can really lean on their supercharging network for that, their user interface, their app, and make a car that maybe isn't as nice, as luxurious, but ends up selling to more of a luxury market because it has these other attributes that the other cars just can't deliver on.
We work with Tesla corporate a lot on their builds, and especially in the early years. They had a veterans hiring department, so the guy who was running the hiring department was the VP of manufacturing. He would always give us a call and say, hey, I got this project for you. A lot of them were designing these military themed vehicles for them. So over the years, we've done like their Marines, we've done the Army and so on and so forth, Navy, etc. The first one that they offered was the Army version. So they're like, hey man, we were thinking about we have this Model S. And obviously that was their flagship car outside the Roadster, right? They really wanted to launch with the luxury market. And I understood their whole branding idea. They want to start with the most expensive cars and work their way down. And the Model S was their flagship at the time. They're like, hey, we really want to honor our veterans department, all the veterans that work with us. We want to do a military themed car. And I was like, so what's your thoughts? They're like, yeah, let's do an Army version. And so we had to come up with the traditional Army camouflage. And obviously we're giddy, we're excited, we get to work with this at that time, which was a newer company. And they just launched, their evolutionary car that's, that everybody's talking about. So we ended up doing a build with custom green and camo wheels and full camouflage. And one of the funnest parts of that particular build was going to the military surplus store. And we had to repurpose, the red gas cans into a different color. So that way we can use them. And I think we ended up picking up water cans and stuff like that because they look the same, but they were in a different color. That and cargo nets, and we bought a really cool roof rack, and we mounted everything and shovels, everything that we could do to make it look military. So when we walked in the surplus store, we just were like kids in a candy store. Just, all right, cool, we're gonna go get this, we're gonna get that. That looks really cool, that'll go there. And it's the prop making part of a theme build. I think that's becomes super fun whenever we do themed cars. Well, I really tried to get into it with that stuff. And it ends up making the project at the end of the day. So when they came to pick it up, it was obviously far beyond what they imagined. They were just looking for a car that had some different color wheels with the camo. And we ended up delivering with, this full-blown project with, all these different things that we had going on, this cool camo. And the military surplus store really helped us bring the car to life with real actual products that, came from or built for that. So they came in, picked up the car, and that was the beginning of a fruitful relationship with Tesla. We were doing 1 year it was a brand new Model X, and we're doing my favorite theme at that time. So they wanted to replicate the, kind of like a fighter jet. So the latest fighter jet at the time, we were going to replicate it. So we had this, and if you've ever been to our last shop, it was on a main street. So imagine your main street here downtown, and you have a glass front building, and there's just cars inside, almost like a dealer kind of vibe, right? So we were able to score one of those buildings for our second one in the peninsula or Silicon Valley. It's just a glass front building, so you could drive by, people driving every day. I'm sure we excited so many people for the 4+ years we were there, where people just Monday see a car, and Friday it's completely different, right? One of the cars that we had was a prototype Model X. So they had dropped it off. They're like, hey, we want to do this theme. We agreed on the design. I was like, all right, cool. We'll make it all satin chrome like a fighter plane. We'll do embedded stuff to look like the camo. There's this, how the metal kind of has that kind of radar kind of thing that's in there. And then we did chrome tints, a bunch of stuff that we did. It was really fun to do that project. But that wasn't the part that got us in trouble. The part that got us in trouble was that we had this brand new Model X, and it was controversial because it had their Falcon doors and all these things that they were pushing boundaries on. And Tesla Corporate was like, oh man, if this car doesn't do good, then we're gonna get in trouble. So they were trying to keep things under wraps for bad press. And there comes some shop in the middle of Silicon Valley with a glass front building that's working on a prototype Model X, and it's all apart in pieces. And it's on a rack, and people are driving by seeing this car there. So someone from Tesla saw it, didn't know who the hell we were and why we had one and why it was broken down in pieces and we're working on it, right? So they started this whole chain of calling people at Tesla, and this person called that person called that person, till it probably got somewhere really high up. It happened over the probably span of a day or two where they were making all their internal calls, and they finally got to the person who was in charge of our project. You got to understand, Tesla's a big company even back then. So we got a call and we're like, hey guys, can you guys do us a big favor and just cover up your windows on the front of your building where that Tesla is parked, so that way we don't get yelled at for you guys having this Tesla. We saw a lot of the prototype things in that particular car that I'm sure that a lot of people, they didn't want seeing because it was their testing in their R&D car. But ultimately, that car came out really cool at the end of the day. And it was probably one of our all-time Tesla projects that we did for Tesla Corporate that was fun. And every time we did one, it would be on display at their factory. So they had the Marines car, their Army car, their this car. And every year, they'll always post it around the right time of the year and on social media. So you'll always see one of our cars up there on one of their feeds throughout the year.
We realized pretty quickly that our R8s were not fast enough to stay ahead of the participants' station wagons. So another company that I get to work for a ton, and really the one that's nearest and dearest to my heart, is Audi. I told you before I was the first chief instructor of the Audi sports car experience, and when I left to host a show at On Cars, that relationship stayed alive, thankfully, and while I was the host of On Cars, I still got to do some Audi programs. I did a program in Central and South America called an Audi Sports Car Experience, Latino America, and it was 6 countries in 3 months, and it was an amazing experience. But a couple of the coolest ones that we got to do for Audi, we got to do an Audi Sports Car Experience in Malaysia, in Sepang, at the Formula One track. We had the instructor, it was 2 of us instructors, myself and one of my best friends, and the participants were all in RS6 Avants, and it was the V10 twin turbo RS6, which is amazing. And it's so cool on those programs. The best time for us instructors are always the setup days, because we have all the cars and we have the track, and we have to go set up our courses and drive the track to make sure that it's all perfect, right? So we're just out there horsing around once we get all our work done. So that was amazing. But the neatest thing about the program itself is that, you know, we're leading the group with R8s, which is not a slouch, a slow cart. They were right-hand drive, which is a little bit weird initially to get used to, but Sepang has really long straights. If anybody who's watched a Formula One race knows that. And we realized pretty quickly that our R8s were not fast enough to stay ahead of the participants' station wagons, RS6s. And so we'd come out of the hairpin that leads onto the long front straight, and I'd try to get the biggest run I possibly could on the group. You know, put any talent that I still have left to get a good run out of the corner, and I'd gap them pretty solidly. And by the end of the straightaway, the entire pack of RS6s would be on my butt, having to come off the throttle. It's just cool to think of a wagon being that fast. The last day of that program, coincidentally, some journalists came out, and so the folks at Audi of Malaysia gave him my lead R8 and gave me an RS4 convertible right-hand drive. I was not happy. Firstly, it's now a manual shift, and I've got a walkie-talkie, and I'm in the right seat, and it's a convertible, so it's a waste of an RS engine as far as I'm concerned. So I was really busy that day. It didn't help that I had, I don't know what you would call the Malaysian version of Montezumala's Revenge, but I was not a happy guy working hard in that RS4. But the other cool program that I got to do with Audi was they sent 2 of us, myself and one of my best friends in the world, Stefan Verdier, to Singapore during the Grand Prix weekend to launch the R8 V10 in Singapore. When we were briefed on the project, they were very keen on the fact that this was not called an R8 V10, it was an R8 5.2. And that's how we were to refer to it, R8 5.2. And the conversations on the conference calls, we'd say, yeah, that, because we had R8 V8s there as well as comparisons. And so we would just be talking in context about the cars and say V10. And remember, it's R8 5.2. Fast forward to us being there, and all the signage and everything there, R8 V10. It's just kind of one of those funny things. But that program was cool because, again, it was Grand Prix weekend, so we got to give laps before the start of the Grand Prix in the car. And then at the start of the Grand Prix, they craned one of the R8 5.2s to the top of the, I want to say it was the Fullerton Hotel, one of the hotels that overlooks the track. And the top floor of the hotel was shared between Chopard Watches and Audi. We were like rock stars that weekend. It was so cool to be up there and looking down at the Formula One circuit at night. And that night turned into a pretty epic night for a bunch of crazy reasons that I am not at liberty to discuss. But it was neat to just feel like, you know, we had a driver that chauffeured us to the home that they had rented for us. And, you know, we were giving laps we were rock stars that weekend. And then Stefan and I fly back to LA, where LAX just get out of customs, and we're sitting there waiting for our bags and waiting for our bags and waiting for our bags. And I'll never forget, he turns to me, he's like, welcome back to reality. We're nobody again. So anyway, that was a cool program. And then the other company that I do currently do some work for is Tesla. Again, I have a great relationship with them due to my college roommate and one of my dear friends, Franz von Holzhausen, being the chief designer there and Elon's right-hand guy. And I got to work a little bit on Model S. Not as everybody, you got to do some development work. I have such respect for development engineers and what they do and how sensitive those guys are to changes that I can't say that. I was basically there to give my opinion on the car. Franz knew that I get to drive a lot of cool cars and new leading edge cars for a lot of manufacturers. And so they wanted my opinion on ride and handling and stability control, traction control. And I'll never forget, so I get there, the chief development engineer at Tesla at the time was a gentleman named Graham Sutherland from Lotus, ex-Lotus, and Lotus is known as sort of like the breeding ground for great development engineers. Super knowledgeable guy. They also had a guy there, a young guy, Aaron Bailey, accomplished racing driver, great guy, development engineer. And so I get up there and I'm there on Franz's recommendation, and we go out in a development mule, Model S development mule, and I drive it through the hills with these two guys that I know their shit in the car with me. And they're asking me questions what I think and this and about the steering and the ride and blah, blah, blah. And so we get back to the development headquarters there in Palo Alto. We park the car, we go off to lunch, and Graham talks to a couple of the mechanics and has them change some things so that when we come back to lunch, I'll drive it and assess the differences. Get back to lunch, get in the car, and we're out driving. They change some shims in the suspension. Not like springs and shocks, they change washers basically, right? So I'm out in the same hills driving the car, and they're both looking at me like, you feel it? You feel it? And as much as every part of me wanted to say, yes, I feel, I didn't feel a damn difference. And it's amazing to me how these guys can feel like the slightest changes. And so I had to be honest and say I didn't feel anything. But that was my first foray into working with Tesla. Since I got a call to work with them on the new Tesla Roadster. So if you saw any of the launch videos of that car, I was the guy giving the rides, the 0 to mile an hour rides the entire night. We were supposed to originally give rides for about 2 hours, and we ended up giving rides till about 1:30 in the morning. And I can't say very much about that car at all because I've already gotten in trouble for an Instagram post that I put up. I literally put up, during testing, we were doing acceleration runs, and the car had been launched. This is like a week after the launch event. Tesla has released all the photos to the media, including a video showing the car accelerating from the standstill to whatever mile an hour. And I had a video that one of the Tesla employees had shared with me that showed basically the same thing, me in the car going from 0 to whatever miles an hour. And I put up on Instagram with something just saying, yeah, this car got launched, whatever. And within minutes, I got a call to please take it down. So I know I can't say much about that car. What I will say about it is that I know there's some skepticism about the figures that Elon quoted that day, 0 to 60, 0 to 100, quarter mile. And I think I can say without getting in trouble that those are actual figures. Those aren't theoreticals. Those aren't calculations. We've done those numbers. And I probably shouldn't say that those numbers are even conservative, but they are. That thing is going to be a proper weapon. So I know there's lots of skeptics. I know people say, oh yeah, but I'll be dead before it comes out. I don't know. I have faith. I love that I live in a world where all these cars exist. You have Koenigseggs and Paganis and Ferraris and Lamborghinis and McLarens and Porsches and Rimacs and Teslas. So I know there's a lot of hate out there, but I just don't understand. If you're a car person, wouldn't you root for everybody? And so not because I'm working for them, partially because I'm working for them, but not just because that. I'm definitely rooting for them because the world will be a better place if that car does get built and it gets on the road, because other people are going to build cars to beat it, and we're going to win.
When the car's in the air, stability control can't help much. I love Pikes Peak, and I have now been up to that race 6 times. I just got a phone call out of the clear blue from a company called Unplugged Performance that does suspension and body modifications on Teslas. And I had done an electric track day with them, with Tesla Model 3s, which actually happened to be pretty darn fast. If you have not driven a Tesla, you don't know how powerful these things are. So I was all for it. I want to do the Pikes Peak hill climb. And I was on a podcast with Ben Schaefer, who is the co-owner of Unplugged. And I said to him, hey, we ought to get that Plaid model Tesla. Tesla had a super high performance car that they wanted to set a lap record with at the Nürburgring, and they called it the Plaid, which is another kind of Tesla joke from the movie Spaceballs. When their spaceship went super fast, they called it Plaid. And I love that sense of humor. So I said, we should get the Plaid Model S and run that at Pikes Peak. Ben said, well, I'm not sure that can happen. I don't think that can happen. He said, but we could maybe build a car for that. And I'm like, oh, really? And that's what happened. In a short space of time, Unplugged bought a brand new Tesla Model 3 Performance, put a roll cage in it, stripped it out as light as possible, lightweight Lexan windows, carbon wide body. All these parts they sell, by the way. So we go to Pikes Peak. We're all excited. I'm not going to do any of the pre-practice that they have at Pikes Peak, but I will drive the car at Laguna Seca a week before the race when it's a brand new, fresh build. And at Laguna Seca, run the car, return what is the fastest time by a production electric car, beating the Plaid at the time. Now, as I said, this has rapidly escalated since. Car handles fantastically. They're all-wheel drive, they're smooth and powerful, and they're unbelievable off tight corners. Next, we go to Pikes Peak. Now, after 6 events, I'm starting to pick out apexes and not just what's the next corner going to be, which was my big mistake last time. So we go to qualify and run the car, and there's a little trouble with electric cars in that they have the most power when they have the most battery. So every time you run an electric car, it's got less battery, it's going to be a little bit slower. The Model 3 keeps most of its power for the first 20% of its battery life. And these runs were, I think, 2.5 minutes on the bottom section. Made a run. Wow, the car was fantastic. We were on used Michelin slicks that I think are fronts off of the Porsche GT3 Cup cars. And man, they worked great. You put tire warmers on them, warm them up real good, took off, the time was good. I loved the car, handled so well, never did anything untoward. It's just you can't turn the stability control all the way off. And that's annoying because in the corners, you can feel it going, the brakes are just cutting it back. And that's the last thing you want in a hill climb. We qualify really well. The time is fantastic. We're ahead of a whole lot of 600, 800 horsepower cars with that are experienced hill climbers and all that because the car is that good. I'm looking at the results. I'm like, we got a good shot at winning this. I didn't really think we were going to win anything in a Tesla. So everything's looking good as we go into day 2. Day 2 for us is the top section. That starts at Devil's Playground, which is about 13,000 feet. And the bumps are worse this year. Every so often they try to fix them. And it's been a couple years since they tried to fix it. And they're bad. And I've recognized it. And on day 1, some of my friends were running like in the top section. I think David Donahue was up there in a Porsche, David Donner in a GT2 RS Club Sports is what these guys are running. And we're not that far off them. So the car's great. They said, oh, Randy, be careful. The bumps are bad. But there's this bump in Bottomless Pit. All the corners have names. Bottomless Pit, boy, that one's a lot worse. You got to look out for that one. And I practice a lot by watching an in-car video by another friend of mine named Mike Skeen, who's run there several times. And coming into Bottomless Pit, he hits the corner and gets all loose and almost spins this thing. I even teased him about it. I'm like, hey, I study your video, Mike. Thank you. Boy, you almost lost it there in Bottomless Pit. He's like, oh, well, yeah, you know. And he won, by the way. But so we're lining up. We borrowed tire warmers for a little bit, but it wasn't a real deal. Before I got in the car, Ben Schaefer, the owner of Unplugged, pulls me aside. He's like, okay, Randy, you qualified really well. We're way ahead of everybody else, which we are. And he says, so, take it easy. And I go, yes, sir. You betcha. And we pull up to the line. And of course, in the back of my mind, it's like, yeah, this is an electric car and we can't charge it. And every run, it's going to get slower. But I had no intention of going fast under the conditions. And they go green, we take off. First sweeper, I'm kind of careful, gentle, nothing crazy. Second sweeper is one of these blue sky, 80 miles an hour, even taking it easy, it's 80 miles an hour. Full on race speed, it's 100. Mountain on one side, blue sky on the other side. Second corner, yeah, okay, we're good. Wait a minute, there's no exhaust noise. We accelerate, all you can hear is the rocks pounding on the body. It sounds like a hailstorm in a tin shed. And so we go down, we're heading for the next corner. I'm cool, we're good. Everything's fine. The car has not put a wheel wrong anywhere I've driven it, ever. I have not driven the car over a big bump ever yet. And so we're heading for Bottomless Pit, and I get up to about 115. I know that bump's there. I know it's rough. I know what I'm doing. I got this. So I brake, little extra, lay it in the corner real gently, hit that big bump, boom, like this. It goes down hard, comes out sideways. And I'm like, wow, didn't expect that. This car has never moved before. Plus, I'm thinking, where's that stability control that was pissing me off yesterday? Why are we even sideways? Well, when the car's in the air, stability control can't help much. So we're sideways, no problem. I do this all the time. I whip the wheel in there, it catch that slide, steer into the skid. Then there's a second coming with car control. This is something that I love to coach on because it's so important for those of you that like to drive fast. And when you correct, where's the wheel? Well, it's turned a lot. If you catch the slide, you got to straighten it back out. Part of the reason this thing got so sideways too is the tires are cold. I'm just not being as careful as I should have been, But the evidence is me sideways. I try to correct it, and the electric assist is a little lazy. It's like through molasses for a moment. It's like, well, that's all it took. That was all she wrote. You know, there are nails in the coffin. That was the last one. And I was like, oh! And instead of going this way, we are now going this way. Now we're going the wrong way in a hurry. Well, I was running about 68 when this all started, 68 miles an hour, which is not crazy. But it got sideways. Now I'm going the wrong way, off to the side, and I'm trying to bring it back in, but, cold tires, dirty road, first run of practice. Don't push hard in your first run. This was the third corner I saw that morning. Slowing down all I can, but we're still running about 40. But it's a glancing blow. There's a beautiful stone wall there that was probably built in the 30s by Roosevelt's Parks program to stimulate the economy in the Depression. I'm not kidding. It's probably that old. And you know why they call it Bottomless Pit? Well, same reason the wall's there. On the other side of that wall is the bottomless pit. Well, I just skimmed it. But car hits it hard. It's in the air. Everything's hard at Pikes Peak. Then it heads into a ditch. And I'm already depressed. I'm not scared. I don't get scared in crashes. I get depressed. I'm like, I am wrecking this car. And Ben's words are ringing in my ears. And so we slam off that wall and we land in a ditch and the car whips around and we have really broken up all four corners. Body looks pretty good, but the wheels have taken the blows and that car is crashed. And I still feel so bad about that. It's terrible. I'm with the owner and we're going around the car looking at everything that's broken. Oh man. It's hurt bad. In fact, the worst thing, we noticed that the mounts on the rear electric motor were broken off. At that moment, it looked very dark. This was before I got Ben Schaefer hooked up with Joe Brenner. Joe was like coming down from the heavens on a shaft of light. Because he had access to this body shop, Eurocars, and they had Tesla-trained body techs. What Ben did was he bought another car, another Tesla Model 3. He bought it from Tesla. They had one in Denver, and some Tesla guys brought it down, and they helped. I mean, everybody came together. They basically replaced everything under the car. And by Saturday morning, they're aligning the car. I think we might get back in this race. And the Pikes Peak hill climb officials are going to let us, because we did qualify, but we didn't practice the other sections. But I'm like, I don't need no stinking practice. But I am going to slow down a little bit, bottomless pit. I'll slow down there. It appeared that we were good, that we were ready. Everything worked. It was really exciting to think that we're going to actually get to race this same car. Well, but they changed everything under the car except the battery. The battery is the length of the car. They had testing machines to plug in, and the battery tested okay. And it made good power in the practice runs. But it did seem to show red on its temperature pretty quick. There's a display on the dash right here on that giant Tesla screen. We still had that. In fact, you had to. To run the car, you had to have that screen. We get to the start line. Everybody's applauding. The car's ready. I'm ready. I'm going to be a little bit careful. But usually once I go, I don't think about that stuff anymore. My brain just sets into race mode, and I just do what I do. And 99% of the time, it turns out great. 1% of the time, stuff like this happens. So we leave the line, and the car's rocking. But we're running these Hoosier slicks. We decided to run a different tire. We had a Super Trick Hoosier slick that we bought. So the car feels a little wobbly. I can't quite figure out what's going on there. But it rained the night before, and the road was dirtier. These are all things that happen at Pikes Peak. It's the beauty of it. It's not a laboratory environment. So a minute or two into the run, the power's not what it ought to be. They're about 450 horse with a lot of torque, especially off the line. Do not drag race against a Tesla. You will lose. And I look over, and the battery is red, like a minute and a half in. Well, shoot, we'd run 15 minutes at Laguna flat out, no problem, in 95 degrees. We had a little switch. They said, if it gets hot, hit that switch. And so I went for the switch, which turns on more of the CO2. It's not nitrous oxide. And that didn't help either. And so now we're going up the mountain, but we're like half power. And it's a hill climb. The grade is as much as, I think, 20% in some places. There are all these hairpin corners, switchbacks, total switchbacks, perfect for an electric all-wheel drive car because of that low-end torque and put the power down so well. So we go up, and I'm doing the best I can, but the straightaways are just endless. A couple of times I'm like, come on, baby, come on, baby. And I'm also concerned about even making it because I know something is wrong. Something's really wrong. Beautiful part of it is after that effort from the team, 48 hours night and day, buying a whole new car and just swapping parts. That way he knew he'd have every single part he needed. A whole car. Ben's smart. But guess what? We made it. We made it to the top, which was job one, and crossed the finish line. Car was great on the bumps with the rebound turned up and a little bit of tire temp. No problem. But that's why you're careful on your first practice run.